What's up, guys? We have our first matchup ready to go here. The Toronto Maple Leafs will face off against the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is a rematch of last year's first round. Last year, we know what happened. They went to 7 games and Tampa won. Ultimately, they go to the finals. They lose against Colorado. But the Tampa Bay Lightning have been in the finals 3 times in the past 3 years and won two Stanley Cups. Last year, it was Colorado's turn, so they defeated the back to back champs. This year, Tampa Bay has taken a step back in terms of what they've accomplished throughout the season. But then again, it doesn't matter about the season. All that matters is playoffs. Toronto, on the other hand, look much better than the Tampa Bay Lightning. They've added a lot of key pieces like Ryan O'Reilly. He got injured. He should be back come playoff time. They added Matt Murray during the offseason. He's injured. We don't know how serious his injury is. They have Eli Samsonov as well. You have Zach Ashton Reese that they've added, Sam Lafferty. They've added a lot of pieces essentially from the offseason up until this point and also throughout the deadline. Then you have Tampa Bay, where they've lost key players like Andrea Palat and they've added guys like Tanner Jeannot, for example, at this year's deadline. So there's a couple of new faces in this year's matchup, but the core remains the same. Kucherov's still there, Stamkos is still there, Matthews is still there, Nylander's still there, uh, Tavares is still there, and Marner. So looking at Toronto's lineup as of right now. We know that Marner is healthy. He wasn't playing last game because of I don't know, just to rest him essentially. So let's just insert Marner into this lineup. And what are your thoughts on this Toronto Maple Leafs team heading into the playoffs versus the Tampa Bay Lightning? Do the Toronto Maple Leafs have a better team than Tampa? Who wins this series essentially?
Well, I think they have a better team. I think they've constructed their team better than they did last year. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say they have a better team than Tampa because I don't believe that. But I think Toronto's constructed their team better this year. I think that Dubas made some very smart acquisitions at the deadline. He brought in Ryan O'Reilly, he brought in Luke Shen, he brought in Jake McCabe, he brought in Sam Lafferty as well. And I think he made some smart acquisitions there. I think, he made a smart acquisition acquiring Samsonov. And I think that the Leafs are better suited for this series than in past seasons, And if you look at their team, they're a fascinating team in the sense where obviously, look, they've underperformed in the playoffs in the past, and that's not a criticism to the Leaf fans. It's just the harsh reality of the situation. But I think this year more than ever is probably the year they can actually do it against Tampa. And the reason I say that is because for me, they've got a really good top three center core with Matthews, Tavares, and O'Reilly. I know Bunting hasn't been at his best. They're expecting Matthew Nyes to potentially join them at some point before the end of the season. I don't know where the Leafs are gonna do for game one of the playoffs, but what I do know is that they're going to be better suited than they were last year, right? And I don't know about their decor. I think McCabe's done well. Riley's had his ups and downs. Luke Shen's very good, but then Justin Hall isn't the best. Connor Timmins, I mean, he's probably a eighth defenseman, seventh defenseman. You got Liljegren and you've got Gustafson as well on that decor. Obviously, we know Jake Muzzin isn't going to come back. I think that's a good decor. I think it's going to be a matter of goaltending in this series, and I think that we talked about this. We've talked about this internally, Chris, but at the same time, we've also had conversations about it on different podcasts as well, talking about the Leafs in Tampa during the trade deadline. To me, it's a goaltending matchup, and I know that people are going to look at this and say, well, Vasilevsky's better than Samsonov. You're right, and I think that that's where the difference is going to be, right? Vasilevsky's won 2 Stanley Cups. He's been to the Cup final 3 years in a row. He knows what it takes to win, and he's beaten Toronto before. Samsonov has won 1 game, and I believe he's won 1 playoff series in his career. I'm not sure about that. Don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure it's either 1 game or 1 playoff series. So there's not much experience there. And obviously, Matt Murray, you can turn around and say he's very experienced. Agreed. The problem with Matt Murray is he healthy? And will he be healthy for game one of the playoffs? The answer to that question right now is we have no idea. And with Matt Murray, there's been a lot of ups and downs this season. He's been good at times, but he's been also very bad at times. And You don't know what goaltending you're going to get. And the question becomes, if this series goes to 7, is Toronto's goaltending going to be enough to keep them away from Tampa? And that's where I don't know about the question mark. That's not to say that I don't believe Toronto's going to win this series. That's not to say that I believe Tampa's going to win this series. It just, to me, the biggest question mark about this series is going to be whether or not Toronto's goaltender is going to hold up. And I know we've talked about this in the past, but this year, I think more than ever is really going to determine that, just because it's one guy that's very inexperienced in the playoffs versus another guy that is very experienced in the playoffs. And unless Matt Murray is healthy, I still don't think that a healthy Matt Murray would be able to backstop the Leafs against the Lightning at this point. But I've been wrong before. That's just kind of my opinion on it. Chris, I know you've been rooting, or you not rooting, you've been saying that you believe the Leafs is their year this year. You believe that this is the year the Leafs are going to finally do it. So just kind of your thoughts on what Toronto looks like and what Tampa looks like,
Well,
and
everyone says this every year that, oh, this is the year that they're gonna win, right? But this year, Kyle Dubas is in a situation where he could possibly be let go as the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's a contract year for him, and the moves he's made during the offseason and during the trade deadline period clearly indicates that he wants to remain as a general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So giving up a guy like Rasmus Sandin and getting a first round pick and Eric Gustafsson in return, um, it seems long term it won't work out because Rasmus Sandin has been killing it so far. Maybe even short term, you could say it's not working out. But Gustafsson has been, fairly good this season with the Washington Capitals, putting up great numbers, and they need to win now, and the window is closing down for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, Nicholas Robertson is out, Jake Muzzin is out, but Nola Cherry should be coming back come playoff time. Ryan O'Reilly's going to be coming back during the playoffs or right before the playoffs. But yes, Eli Samsonov, one win in 8 games during the playoffs for the Washington Capitals. So that's not great for Samsonov in terms of his playoff experience. Not only that, Matt Murray, a lot of injuries. He's always injured. He's always slapped on IR or LTIR. They got him during the offseason, and he's shown that he's capable of being a good goaltender when healthy. But when is he healthy? And that's the problem. And if he's not going to be healthy come playoff time, they're going to have to rely on Eli Samsonov. So we don't know what to expect there. Maybe things are going to work out a lot better in terms of this goaltending duo come playoff time, or this could be the X factor in this situation for Toronto Maple Leafs, where goaltending is not on par to Vasilevsky and the Tampa Bay Lightning, and there you go. The series is done essentially. But just looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs very quickly, looking at their defensive pairings, um, Jake McCabe is not there. He was healthy scratched because they're resting him.
yeah,
You have Eric Gustafsson as well, but they have this is probably their deepest decor that they've had in God knows how long. So I'm really liking their decor. I think their decor is a lot better than the Tampa Bay Lightning. And looking at their offense, with Ryan O'Reilly in it and Nola Cherry and Mitch Marner back because he was a healthy scratch because they're resting him too. They're stacked. And as long as you have Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, and Marner as your core, you're always going to be a competitive team in the season and during the playoffs. But at the end of the day, they have to win their first playoff series since 2004, where they beat the Ottawa Senators. They haven't won a playoff series since, or they've missed the playoffs all those other times. But just looking at this team, they're very deep. Looking at the Tampa Bay Lightning very quickly, you have Stamkos, Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, Brandon Hagel that they've added last year, Nick Paul, who they added last year, Ross Colton, who they uh, you know got through the pipeline essentially. He was a guy that came from their AHL team, and has been a pleasant surprise. Patrick Maroon's been with them for a while now. You have Anthony Cirelli, Alex Killorn that's been there for a while. Tanner Jeannot, who they just recently added, they gave up a boatload for him, and honestly speaking, he hasn't been that impressive. You have Belmar, who's been there these past 2 seasons, and you have Corey Perry, who's been there those 2 past seasons. So yeah, there's been a couple of new faces in the mix from last year and this year, but I still believe that the Tampa Bay Lightning are still very competitive, and as long as
Yeah,
that core remains intact, they could go the distance. They did it last year. A couple of players came in, and other players came out, and they still managed to go to the finals. They lost against Colorado, but it happens. You go to the finals 3 times in a row. You're expected to lose at least once, right? They won
yeah.
2 out of the 3 times, which is
One of the
impressive, and they're a dynasty, in my opinion.
one of the things that I want to say about Tampa from this year to last year, right? And this is where the difference comes in for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They lost some guys in the offseason. They lost Palat, which was the big one that they ended up losing. Um, and that obviously played a role.
They lost
One of,
McDonough.
they lost Ryan McDonough as well. They traded him. And one of the things that people need to realize is that Tampa's forward core this year is not as good as Toronto's. It's not, right? On paper, if you look at Tampa and you look at Toronto, Tampa may have more depth in the sense where I think they could, every single one of these guys, all 12 of them, can put the puck in the net, which I think is always something you need when you're in the playoffs. But I think for me, it's going to be reliant on that top line. And it's going to be reliant on Kucherov, Point, and Stamkos. And if the Leafs can somehow find a way to stop those guys from, taking over the series, I think they have a really good shot here. And it's not to say that I don't believe in Hagel, Paul, Colton, Killorn, Sorelli, or Maroon. But as much as these guys are good, like I said, it really is based on what Kucherov, Point, and Stamkos can do, and what Toronto's defense is going to do. And to me, I just think that Tampa this year, as a team, but even as a roster, I think are weaker than they have been in past years, and I think that that's going to play a factor for them going into the series. Kucherov's had a fantastic season. Point's been really good. Stamkos has been really good. I expect them to be the same way in the playoffs. But playoffs is a whole different beast, and Tampa's got experience. And I think that's one of the things that people need to realize with Tampa is that you can never underestimate it, because at the end of the day, they've won 2 cups in the last 3 years, and they made it to the cup final 3 years in a row. So they clearly know how to do it. They've clearly done it before, and they're going to continue to do it. So I'm not going to doubt them one bit. That's why I'm going to stick with Tampa to win this series. I just want to talk quickly about their defense. It's an interesting situation on defense because, again, they got weaker, right? Victor Hedman, Perbix. Yeah, Perbix has had a decent season, but, nothing too fantastic. Mikhail Sergachev with Darren Radish. Again, not the best. And then you got Ian Cole and Eric Chernak, who Chernak's good. This is going to be, I think, the deciding factor for Tampa. And what I mean by that is that their forward core, I think, can keep up. Their goaltending, they've got better goaltending. But Toronto's got better defense, in my opinion. In terms of depth, if you have to look at depth defensemen, I'm not talking about Victor Hedman versus Morgan Riley. I'm talking about the 8 defensemen that Toronto have versus the 7 that Tampa Bay have. In my opinion, or the 6 that Tampa Bay have currently, because they don't have anybody scratched. But out of those 8 that they have for Toronto, I think Toronto's got a better D core than Tampa right now going
So
into the playoffs. And to
essentially, I
me,
think, yeah.
I think that's going to be a decider for Tampa in the sense where, are they going to be able to stop the Leafs' high octane offense with their defense? I'm not sure. So this is why it's very interesting. It's one of the most entertaining series I think this year, mainly for the fact that Vasilevsky's going to have to stand on his head the way Vasilevsky does, and the Leafs are going to have to find a way to beat him. And if the Leafs can find a way to beat him, they're going to win this series. But if Vasilevsky plays the way playoff Vasilevsky has been playing the last 3 seasons, it's going to be tough, man. And I think that's where the Leafs are going to have an interesting situation. If Samsonov can match Vasilevsky, I think the Leafs are going to win the series comfortably. But if Samsonov struggles and Toronto can't find a way to do this, then I think that's where the concern comes in. So I'm going to edge it just to Tampa, in my opinion. I think Tampa wins this series in 7. But that's my prediction. But yeah, I that it's going to be a close series.
So, the way I look at it right now is that goaltending goes to Tampa,
Yeah,
defense goes to Toronto, and I would say in terms of offense, they're pretty much evenly matched.
I would
Their
give it to
goals
Toronto.
look, their goals for, they're both in the top 10 throughout the
Yeah,
season. Their power plays both top 5 in the league, and their penalty kill is middle of the pack. They're in the top 15. So, in terms of offensive stats and defensive stats as a complete team, they're really even.
yeah,
Looking at, the stats here, Kucherov's been quietly doing very well. Obviously, all the attention's going to guys like McDavid and Draisaitl, but Kucherov passed 100 points. Braden Point is close to 50 goals. It's not the first time he got over 40 goals, so that's great for him. Steven Stamkos still doing great things. Brandon Hagel, really stepping up his game and replacing, I guess, Palat's presence, if you would say. Alex Killorn still doing very well. Sergachev, easing into that, 8-year extension contract and playing on par to what he's being paid. So it's nice to see Victor Hedman not having the greatest season, Nicholas Paul having a decent season, and you could see like the rest of the depth not too shabby whatsoever. And in terms of their goaltending, you could see right here, pretty decent numbers for Vasilevsky as always, and Brian Elliott, not the best numbers,
just put
but
it this way: if Vasilevsky gets injured, Toronto's winning the series.
yeah, I would say that too. I
Yeah,
agree. And then in terms of Toronto, just looking at their stats here, Mitch Marner having a fantastic season, outplaying Nylander and Matthews. But Matthews has been dealing with some injuries this year, so it's understandable. John Tavares doing what he normally does. Michael Bunting having another good season. Morgan Riley slowed down a lot this season. There was a lot of criticism towards his game. Just looking at the rest of the depth, pretty decent numbers, very similar to what um, Tampa's depth has in terms of offensive numbers. And, Ryan O'Reilly only played 8 games for the Toronto Maple Leafs, so he has 5 points in 8 games. And in terms of their um, save percentage, much better compared to Tampa's in terms of their goaltending duo. Matt Murray has better numbers than Brian Elliott as a backup, or in this case, 1A, 1B, because that's what Toronto's rolling with. And yeah, I would say that I'm still gonna stick with the Toronto Maple Leafs winning the series, and you're gonna go for Tampa, and we'll see what happens. But guys, we'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Who wins this series, the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Toronto Maple Leafs? Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and also comment in the comment section below. We'd like to hear your thoughts, your analysis, and we'll get back to you shortly once you comment, and we'll have beautiful discussions in the comment section below. Hopefully, there's not a lot of bantering back and forth with Tampa Bay fans and Toronto fans
yeah,
debating who will win this series, and a lot of crazy things might be said in the comment section because we know how crazy playoffs get every year. We saw it last year when we did our prediction series for the playoffs. So
yeah.
we'll see you on the next episode, guys, and thank you so much for watching.